I've done a lot of videos on controllers for PC gaming, especially comparing a bunch of controllers to one another and deciding which one of these is best for PC gaming in general. But this time around, I want to take a look at the Vader 2 controller on its own. This is an Xbox One shaped controller with 6 custom buttons that carries a lot of potential. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Before we continue, I just want to remind you that we have a Twitch channel where we stream every Friday and Saturday from 8 PM and to 10 PM Eastern Time, so why not go ahead and drop a follow? And also don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and also make sure to check out the merch store. There's plenty of black and white sweetness to choose from up there, so go ahead and check that out. And then make sure to take a look at the podcast as well, as the podcast always goes live every Wednesday and Sunday. And with that said, enough rambling, let us get straight into the video. Now let's begin with an unboxing. So, while I do a pretty poor job of removing the plastic tape here, I would like to relay that this product was sent to me for review. Now let's go ahead and cut through the plastic and begin to slide out the box. Open that secondary box and you will be met by a little pamphlet. Then you will find the controller itself in its full glory. And then just put it aside to find the USB receiver and lift up the holder to find the braided USB-C cable for power. Honestly, this is a pretty nice unboxing overall. The exterior design consists of a pretty hefty controller. This controller does feel nice in hand, with the weight being evenly distributed among the entire controller, I would say. It feels like a nicely balanced controller. It's mostly matte textured all across from front to back, for the exception of the buttons of course and triggers, as these are actually going to be a little bit more glossy. You have C and Z buttons on the front, which are both programmable, as well as 4 buttons on the back, which all stand for M1 through 4, and these are also going to be fully customizable too. You also have the ability to remove and replace the thumbsticks, which is nice. This controller does light up in pretty much any color that you would like, and it features USB-C port for power if you want to use it wired, but you can always use it over Bluetooth as well through the USB receiver that it comes with. Now this controller offers a lot of customization through the Space Station software. I have a lot of problems with the software though, but I will get into that in the complaint section. For now, here's everything that you can do when you're here. So you can actually customize your RGB lighting on it and apply different effects to it if you like, since they do have a couple of presets. You can customize any of the 6 buttons to either emulate another button on this controller or record macros onto it as well. You can adjust the sensitivity and the dead zone of the thumbsticks if you want, and just much more. This software does offer a lot of customization, and I think a lot of people will really like that aspect of this controller. And now that we've gotten through all of that, let's go ahead and talk about game performance in general. I'm going to be testing 3 different types of games with this controller. First, a 2.5D fighting game, an action RPG, and a first-person shooter. Now let's begin with a 2.5D fighter, and that is going to be Dragon Ball FighterZ. My favorite genre to use this controller in are actually going to be fighting games. Since I can still use the bumpers in the macro configuration, it meant that I can just press one button to trigger my ultimate move, rather than having to go through pressing every button needed for that combination. And I have to say that the D-pad was pretty good here, but it felt a little deep for my liking, like just a little too pushed in, I would say, and it did feel a little bit mushy also for my liking. I would prefer something clickier and with a little more travel overall, but that's just me. It still worked very well, and every button here was put to good use, I would say. I would recommend a controller like this specifically for fighting games like Dragon Ball FighterZ very easily. And now, performance in an action RPG like Final Fantasy 15 was pretty good too. It very much is like using an Xbox One controller, but with some extra goodies on there. I didn't have much use for macro keys here, so I just kind of stuck to remapping the buttons to other shortcuts on my controller, so like other face buttons and things like that. It was pretty good since I generally like the feeling of the thumbsticks here. The heads are a little bit thicker than the ones on the Xbox One controller, hence they're more comfortable than the ones on the Xbox One S controller as well, which does give this controller a nice edge in terms of comfort. I liked it quite a bit, and I would be very happy using this controller in games like this for sure. Now, when it comes to a first-person shooter like Doom, I enjoyed my experience, but it wasn't everything that I would have wanted here. This was more of a learning curve, as I tried remapping some of the face buttons to the additional buttons for easier reach, though I was already very comfortable with the default configuration, so I ended up just kind of sticking to that instead, and I didn't really make that much use of the extra buttons here. though I do know that there are still a bunch of other people out there that can, and I don't want to ignore that. Either way, I had a great time, as I do like Xbox controllers for first-person shooters in general, and this one steps it up a notch for sure, especially due to the thumbsticks being more ideal for this genre in my opinion. And in terms of battery life, you do get pretty good performance here. I can't quantify it in terms of actual hours, but I would say that it should last you a good day, or like a good while or so, though not as much as the Xbox One S controller if you're used to using one, since that controller uses AA batteries which do last longer, and this one has a rechargeable battery instead that is not replaceable. Though that's perfectly fine, since battery life has never really been an issue for me with this controller at all. So, and now on to my complaints. Let's start with the more lighthearted stuff, and the stuff that is really just more personal. I do wish that the back of the handles were textured differently, like a rougher texture would be ideal for having an even greater grip on this controller. Not so much a complaint as much as it is just a suggestion. I wish that there was a little more resistance on the triggers too, but that's just me. At least the option for it would be really nice. Lastly, the D-pad is maybe a little too mushy for my liking. I prefer clickier D-pad controls, but that's just a preference thing as well. Now let's get into the more serious stuff that is more likely to affect other people in the long run. Finding the Space Station software needed to customize the buttons and the lighting on this controller was rather difficult to find. It was pretty tough. This needs to be more accessible. Another thing is that it would be nice if this controller actually came with more detailed instructions and maybe to give you a better idea of how to find the software, because Googling it, going to the manufacturer's website, didn't really do it for me. I had to email them directly in order for me to get that link, and I wish it were easier to access. And those little quality of life improvements would make a massive difference for somebody that is using a controller like this for the first time. But the software is also very difficult to connect to, whether you're wired or working wirelessly, because the controller always disconnects from the software, which made setting it up the first time and making finer adjustments later a much bigger hassle than it needed to be, without a doubt. I still have those problems connecting to the software to this day, whether I plug it in directly or use the controller wirelessly. I'm not sure why this happens. I very much appreciate the macro recording option. It is a pro feature that is very welcome to have, but I do regret that you can't map any triggers to the macros, which is unfortunate, really. And I think that I understand why, since it's likely not tournament legal to allow that to happen. But then again, that's just a guess. I'm definitely not an expert in that regard. I just know what I like in a controller, really. And, you know, for somebody like me who's mostly into casual play sessions, I would appreciate that. Now, as far as I know, there is no workaround for this. So, in conclusion, I know that I was pretty critical, in part because I'm so picky about controllers, but also because I do believe that there are certain things about this controller that could be deal breakers to some people. But if you were looking to buy a controller of this style and wanted that customization aspect, that honestly is really cool once you actually get it to work, and it does offer a lot for the money, no doubt, then it is difficult to ignore. This controller is really good at being a great controller for just about any genre of games. It's got a very clean LED light on the front and, well, just a very good build overall in my opinion. Sure, there are definitely things about it that could be better, but that doesn't mean this is a bad product by any means. In fact, I think that there are a lot of great things that come from going with this controller. It's got a lot of customization features built right onto the software. It's just that getting the software to work properly with the controller is a massive pain. But I am pretty happy recommending this controller over an Xbox One controller for your PC if you were looking into one, and even for mobile games. For instance, if you like to use a controller for playing games on Google Stadia, on your phone, on your tablet, or what have you, this would be a fantastic controller to have around as well for just that. You've got a general recommendation from me here, as I do think that they do deserve it. And if you're interested in purchasing this controller, then I'll be making sure to leave affiliate links down to Amazon in the description. And you also have the option to use Luster in case you're looking for other types of alternatives. Luster is going to help you out when it comes to showing you a list of just like different controllers that people might be into, and it can even help you find sales across the web if there are any, which is really useful. So I'm going to be leaving links to that down below. And also there's ABUNDA in case you would rather finance this controller rather than paying for it outright. right? You don't need a credit card at all for this. It's just very simple and easy financing. I do recommend that you give it a try. But links to all of that down below. If you use any of my links, I get a small commission that does help out the channel quite a bit. Also, do come check out the Tech Summit podcast. That is going to be very important as it does go live twice a week now. And also, don't forget to stop by the Tech Summit Discord, because I would love to hear from you over there. If you have any feedback, if there's anything you'd like to say, or just stay in touch with the community, have any questions, that is the place for you. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitch, where I like to stream on the weekends, Fridays and Saturdays from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Links to that down below, as well as links to my Instagram and my Twitter if you're into that too. But with that said, this has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you all later. Enjoy.